Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eat to Treat. We are a nonprofit that aims to end health disparities. And with Eat to Treat, I'm Dr. Amaris Williams. I have a PhD in nutrition, and I'm an avid foodie and a cook. So for Eat to Treat, I do live cook along cooking demonstrations. Um, Usually live. This one is recorded, but if you can't see all the videos on this channel, click the live tab above this video. If you're on the channel page, click the live tab and you'll see more videos. But anyway, this one we're doing pot roast and polenta with a mushroom saute, a balsamic mushroom saute. It's gonna be delicious as usual, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get started because this one is one of the more involved ones. So let me just change the camera angle. This is kind of busy, I know, but bear with me. This is um there's a lot of steps, none of them are difficult, and it's just a lot of waiting and occasionally stirring something. So you can definitely have the TV on or be listening to a book or something while you're doing this. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is sear the meat. I've got this 3 pound chunk of boneless beef chuck roast. Um, wasn't cheap, but this is, I mean, a quarter pound is kind of what well, three ounces, 3.5 ounces for fish is what we say is a serving size. In real life, people usually eat closer to a quarter pound of meat to feel satisfied. Um, so this is like 12 servings of meat. So this is a lot. So while it did cost a lot, it uh, it's gonna feed a lot. So we got that, and I'm just realizing that I didn't rinse this, and some people get nervous when I don't rinse the meat, so I'm gonna rinse it and I'm gonna cut the video and come back. Okay, I got the meat. I'm not gonna season or anything because I'm about to cook it in broth with onions and carrots and seasonings, so it doesn't really need to be seasoned, especially since it's all gonna rinse off once I put it in the liquid and boil it for however long we're gonna boil it. That depends on how you're cooking it, so I'll get into that later. Um, so I'm not gonna season it. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna sear it, and searing it puts color on the meat, and putting color on the meat does add flavor, and that flavor is not gonna wash off. So to sear it, I'm just gonna put some oil in a large skillet, a skillet large enough to fit the meat. Um, if you don't have a very large skillet, you can always cut the meat in half or something like that, and then sear all sides of that. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on. You want it on a high heat. I've got mine on 6 out of 10. Probably could go higher, as high as 7. This is a fairly powerful cooktop, so I'm not going to overdo it. But I am gonna wait for the oil to get hot, and then I'll put the meat in there and brown it on all sides. Just spreading the oil around. I should have turned my phone on silent. I hope you guys can't hear that. Okay, so we're gonna brown the oil on all sides. What we can do while the oil is heating up is start adding stuff to the pot. This is called a pot roast because usually the traditional method of cooking it is you um, sear it, then add everything else that you're gonna cook it in, the stock, the carrots, the onions, and then you put the whole pot in the oven. So pot roast, right? And you cook it on low and slow, like 275 degrees for 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna use my pressure cooker. So what I'm gonna do is sear the meat, then transfer it to this, which is a pressure cooker, pressure can or pressure cooker, and then throw everything else that's gonna go in there, and then cook it under high pressure for 45 minutes. So instead of 4 hours, I got 45 minutes. All right, I'm starting to smell the oil, so I'm gonna go ahead and put the meat in. If you guys can hear that sizzling, that's what we're going for. So I'm gonna let that brown. And then I'm gonna talk about beef stock while that's browning. So I've got this no salt added beef stock, and I've got a low sodium beef stock. Or 50% less sodium. It's not really low sodium. You can use either of these. If you use the no salt added, you add your own salt, which is it's preferable, because then you know exactly how much salt is in there, and you're in control. This, you're just trusting the manufacturer. So, but you know, either way, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna put 1 quart of stock in my pressure cooker. If you are using the pot in the oven method and you're searing your meat in the pot in which you're going to cook it, then don't put the stock in there yet. Wait for everything to brown on all sides. And then put the stock in after you've browned the meat. Okay, so I've got 1 quart of stock in there. And then the other thing we're going to put in there is some onion. And it doesn't have to be fancy. I'm just going to cut it in quarters. This is a rather large onion, as you can see. This is a sweet onion, a Vidalia. And I'm going to just cut it into quarters. And then I'm going to throw it in the pot, gently, so it doesn't splash. And then carrots. 4 carrots is what the recipe calls for. I'm just going to check my meat. When it comes up off the pan easily, that means it's browned on one side. This is sticking, so it's not quite done. So I'm just going to peel the carrots. You don't have to peel the carrots if you wash them and scrub them down pretty good. But I'm going to peel mine. And then I'm just going to rough chop them, cut the ends off. And then I'm going to cut them in half, lengthwise, just both ways, so fat-wise and lengthwise. So that way we have lots of surface area to get the flavor released. And I'm just going to keep doing that while the meat is browning. And yes, this is a beef recipe, and they say red meat is the least healthiest meat, but that doesn't mean that you can't eat it at all. It just means it's not an everyday thing. So definitely still eat red meat if you like it, if you enjoy it. Just don't eat it all the time. And then a lot of the studies that have shown negative health benefits for red meat, they don't really control for what type of red meat, so, and how it's prepared. So, you know, hamburgers from McDonald's are lumped in the same category as, you know, a filet mignon steak. So, and, you know, conceptually, I mean, you know, the studies, they don't differentiate between the two, but if they did, I think that they would find different levels, like different, you know, associations if they differentiated between fast food red meat and home-cooked, healthfully prepared red meat. And this is still sticking, but it's pretty brown, so I think I'm gonna, well, still browning. Try and loosen it a little bit. And flip it. Brown the other side. There we go. I'm a little impatient sometimes. Probably would be better if I had waited. But we got a good sear on most of it. So let's get a good sear on the other side. And then I'll stick it in the pot. Alright. One more carrot left to do. So anyway, my point is, a high-fat red meat that's ultra-processed and cooked in a less healthful way, probably should avoid that pretty much all the time. But there is a place in a healthy diet for a lean, healthfully cooked red meat. And I think, you know, if you're not eating it all the time, which is the recommended way to go, is not eating it all the time, you can afford then to have a high quality red meat. Like, you can have your filet mignon, you can have your large piece of chuck roast without breaking the bank, because you're not doing it frequently. Anyway, that's my theory. Alright, let me just make sure that we've got everything. Okay, so also going in the pot is 2 tablespoons of Worcester sauce, or Worcestershire sauce. Nobody says that. Gordon Ramsay calls it Worcester sauce. I just feel like they're ignoring all the letters in the name. But anyway, so go ahead and put 2 tablespoons in your pot, unless you're searing your meat in the pot in which you're going to cook your roast, in which case pulled off. But don't forget. And then if you're using a salt-free or a no salt added broth like I've used, go ahead and add as much salt as you think you're going to need. I'm going to add, let me measure this. I think, well, let's look at how much is in here. This is 390 milligrams of sodium per cup, so that's about 1,600 milligrams, which is about 3/4 of a teaspoon. So I think I'm going to put half a teaspoon in mine. And we'll see. You can always add salt, but add more salt later. You don't have to get it perfect right when you start. Okay, so I turned off the heat on my meat. It's starting to brown on the other side. And I'm not going to worry about browning the thin sides. I think browning the thick sides is, like the flat sides, is plenty. And we got plenty of flavor on this piece of meat. And it's coming up pretty easily. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer it to my pressure cooker. Get it in there. It's kind of sitting on top of the vegetables and not being submerged in the meat. So I'm going to make in the broth. So I'm going to make sure it gets down in the broth. So just moving the vegetables out of the way and pushing it down. Okay, let me get it in there real good. As good as it's gonna get. And if you need to, don't be afraid to add more broth. I think, in a pressure cooker, it's probably going to cook just fine without adding more broth. But if you're doing the oven method, I've seen some recipes where it says it needs to be half covered. Some recipes where it says it needs to be completely covered. I haven't experimented to know if that really makes a difference. But it works for somebody, so I don't think that not having it submerged is going to cause it not to cook in a pressure cooker or in an oven, because the heat is going to be concentrated in there. But if you were, and I think if you're using a slow cooker, which is another option that you definitely can use, it still would be fine if the meat weren't completely submerged. But I'm going to put another quart of broth in there, and I'm not going to increase the sodium because this is a 50% sodium, 50% less sodium broth, so it has sodium in it. So I'm just gonna leave it like that, and I think we're good. So I'm going to program this to cook for 45 minutes, and this is for a 3-pound roast. If you've got a bigger or smaller roast, then you may need to adjust it. I remember how to work this thing. Okay. All right, 45 minutes, start. Okay, so that's ready. Now, next thing is let's start making the polenta. And for that, we need a pot and some chicken broth. Well, I'm using chicken broth. You can use vegetable broth. You can use whatever broth you want. You can try it with beef broth. I think that might be a little too heavy, but you can try it with beef broth. I would, if you're going to use beef broth to kind of match your roast, I would use like half and half. So right now we've got 4 cups of broth and 1 cup of water. If you're using a heavier broth, I would recommend using 2.5 cups of broth and 2.5 cups of water to kind of dilute it a little bit. But I'm using this no salt added broth, and let's get this going. So I'm just going to pour it in the pot. You want to pour your liquid in your pot before you pour in your that stuff, the cornmeal, that stuff, yes. So 4 cups of broth and or stock. I'm using them interchangeably, but this says broth on the box, so it's broth. But you can use stock, whatever you have. And 1 cup of water. So I'm just gonna measure out a cup of water. Put that in there. And then let's talk cornmeal. So this is a whole grain. It says right there on the package, whole grain cornmeal. The stone ground part is not important. That just means that it's not all the same size and that they used a stone to grind it. But the whole grain part is what we're going for here. And cornmeal. You can use medium grind or coarse grind. That doesn't make, it makes a difference to the texture, but doesn't make a difference nutritionally. So, that's personal preference. But you want the whole grain variety. And I'm just going to pour out 1 cup. I'm going to turn this pot on first. Turn on 6 out of 10. And then measure out my cup of cornmeal. And you can do as many servings as you like, but this is the ratio is 5 to 1, so 5 parts liquid to 1 part cornmeal. Just make sure I measured that well. Okay. And then you want to stir your cornmeal into your broth. You can whisk it in like the directions say, or you can just stir it. Just trying to avoid lumps here, which I'm not doing a very good job. Okay. We're going to bring that to a boil. You can add salt and pepper to this. You can add it at the end, or you can add it now. I think I'm going to add mine at the end. Okay. So I'm going to leave that be. And then the only other thing you need for this, besides the liquid and the cornmeal, is a couple tablespoons of butter. So just get yourself some, I'm using unsalted butter, so again I can control exactly how much salt I'm putting in my dish. And then salt and pepper. So this is really simple. You can make it as complicated as you want. So after you cook this, you can eat it, right? Or you can put it in a sheet pan in a nice flat layer, put it in the fridge, let it firm up and get solid, then cut it into blocks, and then sear the blocks in butter to kind of brown them on the edges and get crispy. And that is really delicious, but it's a lot of extra work. You can just scoop it out of the pan, put it on a plate, and eat it when it's done. But if you want to get fancy and like impress a date or something, then definitely put your cooked polenta in a sheet pan, cool it, cut it, sear it. All right, enough about that. Let's move on to the last thing. Let me just remind you that when you're cooking this, after you bring it to the boil, you're going to turn it down to a simmer, but you want to keep stirring it every 5 minutes or so as it cooks, or else it'll scorch on the bottom. So, just in case I forget to say that. Next up is the mushrooms, which I didn't rinse. Alright, I'm going to have to pause the video and rinse these mushrooms. Hopefully yours are already rinsed, because I don't want to eat peat moss, even though it's not really dangerous. I just don't want to eat it. So, I'm going to rinse my mushrooms, and then I'll be back. Okay, I've got rinsed mushrooms, and now I'm just going to cut them into quarters, and then put them in the pan that I seared the meat in. It's got nice little brown bits of meat in there. It's going to be delicious. Alright. So, without cutting your fingers, just cut your mushrooms into quarters. You can use any kind of mushroom that you want that's not poisonous. And you can use a mix of mushrooms. I'm using half a pound. You can easily scale this up to as much as you want. A lot of grocery stores sell mushrooms bulk, where you just get as much as you want and put in a little produce bag. And then you can get oyster mushrooms and wood ear mushrooms, then shiitake and all the other kinds. And these don't have to be small pieces. You can slice them if you want, but I'm just gonna do large pieces of mushroom. And the other thing that we're going to put in this pan is onion. So go ahead and peel your onion if it's not peeled. Okay, so got my onion that's peeled already, and I'm just going to cut the stem off, and then cut through the stem and the root, and slice it. So I'm just doing thin slices here. And that's how I want mine. If you want yours diced, then feel free to dice it. This is a customizable recipe. Alright, so my polenta is boiling, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it down. I didn't say that if you're doing the slow cooker method and you're cooking this for 8 hours, or if you're doing the oven method and you're cooking it for 4 hours, then you would start your polenta when you have about an hour left, and you would start your mushrooms after you started your polenta. So just, like, this is something that you can say you can start the pot roast in a slow cooker before you go to work, and then come home and do the rest. So this is something that you can do on a weekday unless you want to cool your polenta and cut it into blocks and sear it. Then I would cook the polenta in the morning when you prepare the roast, then put it in the fridge, go to work, come back, and then I got a little bit stuck to the bottom, so I'm just scraping the bottom here. And then when you get back, sear the polenta to serve it. Okay, so I'm going to slice my other half of the onion, and then go ahead and turn the pan on. Up to 6. Add more oil to the pan if you think it's necessary. I think I'm going to add a little bit because mushrooms do tend to soak up oil. So I'm just going to add some. And once these cook down a little bit, we're going to add some herbs and some garlic. Or some herbs and salt and pepper. What are we adding? Yeah, herbs and salt and pepper. And then, after that cooks a little bit, we're going to add some balsamic vinegar and some garlic. Let that reduce down. And then we'll add some stock or broth, whatever you have. And let that cook down. Well, first we have flour and then we have the stock. And that way it thickens. And then it's ready to eat, really, at that point. Oh, I'm sorry. It is ready to eat at that point, but then we're going to finish it with some lemon zest and lemon juice. So, let me go ahead and clean my board a little bit. I'm going to stir my polenta. Got a big lump in there. And mush it. Okay. And lemon zest. So you can use a microplane. I'm gonna just use a knife and cut the skin off, but not all the skin. So you just want the top layer of the skin. You want to leave as much of the white part behind. The white part is bitter. It's called the pith. So you can see here that I don't have much white on there. It's just the yellow. And that's what we want. We want to leave the white part behind. That's too much light. Okay. So this recipe calls for half of a lemon zested and juice. So I'm just going to zest half of this lemon. And then I'll cut it in half and it'll be ready to squeeze the juice into the mushrooms when they're ready to go. So that's enough of that. I'm just going to chop up the zest into small pieces. And I'm just rocking the knife. The knife has a curve near the tip, so even if you're using a santoku, it's curved at the tip, and that allows you to rock it up and rock the tip always stays connected to the cutting board, but the back end, the part closest to your hand, rocks up and down, and that's how you can quickly move through smaller pieces of fruits and vegetables. So that's good for that. It doesn't have to be super fine. So that zest is ready to go. I'm going to cut this lemon in half, so that's ready to go. Alright, let me stir this a little bit. Alright, so now I'm going to add my herbs and salt and pepper. If you are using a low sodium broth, I don't think you need to add any salt. You can add pepper, but I'm going to be using a no salt added broth. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt to my my onions, and I'm going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon. Onions and mushrooms, and then pepper. For the mushrooms, I'm going to use white pepper. If you were going to add pepper to your pot roast, then I would I think I'm going to do that. Okay, then I would use black pepper. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but it's not the end of the world if you don't have white pepper. You can use black pepper. It's just personal preference for me. And then the herbs. So I'm stirring my polenta. You can see that. In case you're not watching, go ahead and stir your polenta. Don't forget. Herbs. So I've got sage. I don't think I'm going to use sage. I think I'm going to use basil and thyme. You can use rosemary, especially if you have a sprig of fresh rosemary. You can add that. But I've got dried basil. I'm going to throw some of that in the pan. And I've got dried thyme. And I'm going to put some of that in there. And I think that's it. I have rosemary outside growing, but I just don't feel like going out there to get it. So, no rosemary for me. So I'm going to stir that in and let it cook a little bit. While that's cooking down, I'm going to measure out my balsamic. So we just need a 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar. And the other thing that goes in with the balsamic is garlic. So 2 teaspoons of garlic paste or 2 cloves of garlic. So that's ready to go. 1/4 cup. So garlic paste, I'm going to go ahead and put the garlic paste in there, 2 teaspoons. Garlic paste can be expensive unless you buy it at Aldi. That's where I buy my garlic paste. I'm going to stir that in. you don't have an Aldi near you, and garlic paste is prohibitively expensive at your grocery store, just get garlic and smash it. Throw it in there. Call it a day. Okay, I'm going to put the balsamic in carefully. And you can use the balsamic to deglaze the pan. Deglazing the pan is just scraping all the brown bits off the bottom. Oh, that is pungent. Okay, you want to scrape the brown bits off the bottom so that you get the flavor dissolved into the sauce. And that is called deglazing the pan. So we got all that meat flavor dissolved in there. And as you can see, it doesn't take long to get the balsamic to reduce down. So now we add the flour. So 2 teaspoons of flour. Go ahead and sprinkle that in the pan. Okay. Flour. Stir it in. Let it absorb some stuff. Alright, now we're adding 1.5 cups of stock or broth of your choice. You can do vegetable. I am out of vegetable. That beep just means my pressure cooker has reached pressure and is now starting the 45-minute timer. So it's going to be a little bit before my roast is done. Well, that's okay. The stuff will keep. So 1.5 cups of, get the polenta out of there. 1 cup of broth. 1.5 cups of broth total. So this is 1 cup. Pour that in. And then I'm going to add 1/2 cup. Bring my total up to 1 cup, 1.5 cups. Put that in. And you can keep an opened thing of broth in your refrigerator. You put the top back on and put it in your refrigerator. You can keep it for a few days, up to a week probably, once it's open. I keep mine longer than that because I forget when I opened it. But anyway, we're going to cook this down until it thickens. And then we'll have a nice mushroom and onion and herb gravy with a little garlic in it. And we'll put that over our polenta and top it with some pot roast. Shredded pot roast. So I'm going to stir my polenta. I think I'm going to turn it down a little bit. I keep getting stuff stuck to the bottom. So I'm going to turn it down to a 3 out of 10. And so basically you just keep cooking your polenta until it thickens up. And then add your butter, your salt and pepper if you're using that. The mushrooms, we're going to cook that down till it thickens up. Then I'm going to add the lemon zest and lemon juice to finish it off, turn the heat off. And I just finished this before my pressure cooker starts whistling. So because this is going to be noisy and distracting, I'm going to come back when everything's finished and show you the plating of the meal, and that's it really. I mean, we're done. The prep work is done, and now let's just hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait and let things cook. So I'll be back later. Okay, I'm back. My pressure cooker has finished its timer, and I've slowly let the pressure release. So I'm gonna open it for the first time. It smells good. Okay. And let's get the pot roast out of there. A polenta spoon. Oh, it's so tender. It's just like moving around. Just falling apart. Oh my gosh. Alright. Yeah. This is like completely broken down, which is perfect. I don't eat a lot of pot roast, and I can't remember if you're supposed to shred it or cut it. I googled it, but couldn't find a definitive answer, so I'm just gonna cut mine. If you want to shred it, it'll definitely just fall apart for you, as mine is falling apart. I don't know if you can see that. But I am hungry, so I'm just gonna cut up a little bit. And then get it on my plate so I can eat it. So, got the pot roast. Now let's get some polenta. Serving size. Oh, mine has cooled a bit and it has solidified a little bit. But I've already put the salt and butter in this. I put about a half a teaspoon of salt, and the 2 tablespoons of butter that's in the recipe. And so that's ready. And then, oh, the serving size. I'm going to tell you the serving size. So uncooked, about a quarter cup is the serving size. So since we put a cup in the pot, this is 4 servings. Cooked, if you want to measure it cooked, then it's about half a cup. And that's 1 serving of whole grain for you. And I'm just going to top it with my mushrooms and onions, which is not really hot anymore, but I think it's going to be delicious. I'm going to add some salad to my plate. That's why I've done half like that. I didn't include in the recipe because the mushrooms and the onions are kind of our vegetable, but you can always add more vegetables. Actually, no, I probably won't do a salad. I'll probably do an apple. I like fruit, something sweet to kind of lighten this plate. But that's basically it. I've added the lemon juice and lemon zest to this, and I added some salt. I think I added the salt while you guys were watching. So it's not cold, but I mean it's not hot, but it tastes good. Yeah, this is good. Let me try the roast. So tender. Alright, let me change the view. Okay, so we made pot roast, we made polenta, made mushroom gravy. And I'm about to mix all this up together on my plate. I feel like it should be mixed together. And that's it. So subscribe, hit the bell icon, and be notified of the next demo. And I'll see you.